Phil Steele, welcome back to T-Town. I hope all is well, sir.
All is great, Ryan. I appreciate the kind comments, and glad to be on with you once again.
Well, no doubt. And it's out on newsstands today. Today's the release date, correct?
Today is the big release date, and that makes it more exciting. You know, it's available at Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Books A Million, CVS, Target, Walgreens, Publix, grocery stores. Finally, we come out later than everybody else, Ryan. Everybody else came out like the middle of May. They had to go to press before spring practices were even over to get that deadline. We wait. Spring practices are over all the way through all that transfer portal stuff in the month of May. I think we got the latest transfers, the latest two deeps, and really pleased with the product.
Phil, let me get your thoughts on the University of Alabama. I know you think highly of what's happening here in Tuscaloosa. Kind of give me some early projections as we look ahead to 2019 for the Tide.
Well, clearly one of the best teams in the country. Yeah, that's not exactly going out on a limb. But, you know, when I look at Alabama this year, I see, first of all, perhaps the most explosive offense in the country. Tua Tagovailoa at QB. Despite losing Damian Harris at running back, they're loaded there. Najee Harris, Trey Sanders, a couple of guys that were both the number one running backs coming out of high school. Best receiving core in college football led by the Blitnikoff winner, Jerry Jeudy. An offensive line that I rate number 6 in the country. And defensively, remember last year, Alabama only had 3 returning starters on defense. This year they have 6. It's a pretty experienced unit by Alabama standards. Tons of talent throughout the lineup. As special teams look solid, I rate them number 18 in the country. The schedule is there. It's laid out perfectly. Alabama will be double-digit every single game this year. Closest one looks to be the big Iron Bowl game in Jordan-Hare, where they are currently a 13-point favorite. And then finally, 44-16. You got to think that's going to be a motivating factor, a chip on the shoulder, whereas Alabama players were getting smoke last year blown up by the fact that they were called perhaps the greatest team of all time at the end of the regular season. I think this year they enter the playoffs with a 44-16 chip on their shoulder.
Phil, when you go back, did I hear you correctly? Who is the toughest test, in your opinion, right now on the regular season schedule for Alabama? Who do you have as their most difficult opponent?
It would be Auburn in Jordan-Hare. Close to them would be both the road trips to A&M and Mississippi State, and it's because of the location. I think that the most talented team they play on the schedule is LSU, but they do get them at home. And, of course, they beat LSU 29-0. I've got LSU, the number 4 team in the country in the power poll. But going on the road is always a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to say it's the Iron Bowl in Jordan-Hare.
Okay, so with that being said, what do you expect from the Auburn Tigers in 2019?
It's a very good Auburn team. In fact, they rank in my top 10 in the power poll in the front of the magazine. It tells you how talented they are. They have my number 2 rated defensive line in the entire country. Surprised Derek Brown came back for his senior season, turned down the NFL. I like the linebacking core. DBs, I rate number 15. Special teams are actually number 3 in the country. Offensive line, number 5 in the country. Solid receivers and dynamic running backs. Biggest question mark is quarterback. Now, they've got talent. I like Joey Gatewood, Bo Nix, both contenders for that job. And I think Joey Gatewood is my choice to get that job. 6'5", 237 pounds, redshirt freshman. Reminds you a little bit of Cam Newton. So it's a perfect offense for Gus Malzahn to have. He likes that when he's got a mobile quarterback, he's got one. Here's what I don't like about Auburn this year, Ryan. The schedule. They play my second toughest schedule in the country. Oregon in Arlington, at Texas A&M, at Florida, at LSU, and then home to Georgia and Alabama. Now, I know they beat Georgia and Alabama the last time they had them at home, but I think when you look at the schedule this year, they're right now in Las Vegas an underdog in 5 games, despite the fact they're number 10 in my power poll.
Wow. That's a big number. Certainly the schedule is not going to be very favorable for the Auburn Tigers. Going back to Alabama, if Alabama's not in New Orleans and they don't make it to the national championship game or even in college football playoffs, is there a reason why that this team, is there anywhere that you question around this Alabama team?
Question mark with the team? Not really.
Okay.
I think this is a talented team throughout the lineup. I don't know if it's the same dynamic defense they had a few years back, but this offense is just so much better than the teams they had back in the early 2010s. So I think the defense is very good and good enough to get the job done, especially with that offense. The biggest thing would be, and Ryan, is the college football. And college football, you have to play your A game almost every weekend, or else you could get upset. Look at last year. Clemson was a 4-touchdown favorite over Syracuse in Death Valley, and they needed their third-string quarterback to complete a 4th and 10 pass to keep a drive alive and pull out the win. Had they not won that game, Syracuse would have won their division, and Clemson wouldn't have been in the ACC title game. So they nearly missed the playoff last year, despite the fact they were an extremely talented team. So that would probably be my biggest concern with Alabama. If they all of a sudden look past an opponent, especially one of those tough ones I threw out, that could be a concern.
Phil, as you're sitting there debating and you're going through, is Trevor Lawrence the better quarterback? Is Tua Tagovailoa the better quarterback? Can you take us in your processing as you're looking at these two elite quarterbacks trying to decide which guy is the better guy?
Well, I personally think when you look at Trevor Lawrence, you're looking at a guy that's going to be the first pick in the draft when he comes out for sure. I think he's got everything you want. Granted, he's only a sophomore, but extremely talented individual. He's got the size you want out of a QB at 6'6", 215. He's got the mobility. He's got the arm strength. And as we saw in the championship, he can dissect a pretty good defense. With Tua, he's a guy that had the Heisman won, a great college quarterback. And, you're looking at a guy that's a little shorter, but he's got the arm strength. He's got the mobility. And well, Lord knows what kind of stats he would have put up last year if he just would have played in the fourth quarter. I mean, 43-6 ratio, playing mostly 3 quarters of a game. So it's like a beauty final here, a beauty pageant championship. You've got two beautiful things, two great quarterbacks, and you have to decide which one's better. I'd probably lean just a hair with Trevor Lawrence at this point.
We're talking to Phil Steele, the grandfather of all the great publications right now that is on your newsstand. Phil Steele's College Football 2019 Preview Guide that's available right now. You'll find it in your local bookstore. And if you're not able to do that, you can go to philsteele.com and select that great cover of Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, DeAndre Swift, and Shea Patterson right on the front of the cover. Let's go to Clemson here for a couple of minutes. Do they have the easiest walk, in your opinion, to the college football playoffs?
Sure. Yeah. You look at Clemson's schedule, they're going to be a 17-point favorite or higher in every single game this year. And, offensively, my question is coming into the year, Ryan, who's going to have the better offense, Alabama or Clemson? Because they both have great quarterbacks. They both have great running backs, great receivers, and great offensive line. They're going to be within 1 point of each other as far as the overall scoring title this year. Now, defensively, they lose a lot off that defensive line. 3 first-round draft picks, a third-round draft pick. But guess what? I still rate them the number 5 defensive line in college football, so they're going to be dangerous there. Now, they come up a little short special teams-wise in my ratings. We'll have to see if they can get that rolling. But this is a team that when you look at their schedule this year, we touched on a couple of games where Alabama may only be a 2-touchdown favorite. We're talking about Clemson being at least a 17-point favorite in every game. The closest ones are Texas A&M at home, where they're a 17.5-point favorite. And remember, Alabama has to play at Texas A&M, so Clemson clearly has a path that should get them in the and finish the season number 1 in the regular season rankings.
Phil, when you look at this third-place team here, I'm noticing a name, and it's been a while since they're part of the conversation. You've got the Wolverines part of the college football playoff conversation for 2019.
Yeah, and when you look at Michigan, I have picked every single year. I have been picking Ohio State over Michigan, and I've yet to pick Michigan with Jim Harbaugh to beat Ohio State. But this year I am, and here's what I like about him. The first thing I like about them is the defense. This is a Don Brown defense, and while they lose talent, keep in mind 2 years ago they had just 1 returning starter on defense, and they allowed just 18.8 points per game. Well, this year, 5 returning starters on defense. That is a clear top 10 defense. And offensively, they bring over Josh Gaddis, who was the co-offense coordinator at Alabama. Now, he's going to install the spread offense. Perfect fit for Shea Patterson. Patterson's got dangerous receivers to throw to, one of the top offensive lines in the country. I think Michigan's going to have a much more potent offense this year. And then finally, the schedule. Their 3 toughest games are Notre Dame, Michigan State, and Ohio State. The good news is they get all 3 at home. And in Ann Arbor, Jim Harbaugh is actually 24-4. So I think this is finally the year. Other folks may have called for Michigan to break through in past years. I haven't. I haven't even called for them to win their division once. But now I'm calling for them not only to win the Big Ten East, win the Big Ten overall, and make the playoff.
Phil Steele, how far can Jalen Hurts take Oklahoma?
Well, I made the mistake last year, Ryan, and I told Coach Riley when I talked to him in the spring, I said, Coach, you made me a liar. He's like, really? Why is that? I go, because all off season long, I said, I like Kyler Murray, but there's no way this guy matches Baker Mayfield's stats from last year. Baker Mayfield's stats were incredible. And then what happens? He goes out and perhaps even exceeds Baker Mayfield's stats. So normally I would say, Ryan, at this point, you can't replace a Heisman Trophy winner. You can't match those stats. But Jalen Hurts is a guy who's got great starting experience. He's the most experienced of these three transfer quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley's brought in. And I think he could have a big-time year. Now, my biggest question mark with Oklahoma for Jalen Hurts is the offensive line. Last year, I'm a Joe Moore Award voter, and last year we had Oklahoma as the number one offensive line in college football. Well, this year they lose 4 of those starters. So how quickly that offensive line comes around will tell us how quickly that offense emerges. But I'm not going to put it past who I'm calling the quarterback whisperer, Lincoln Riley, of getting the most out of Jalen Hurts, who's pretty good clay to work with.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly, when you look at Lincoln Riley, and I mean, he's a fast and up-and-coming coach. I mean, is he the hottest name? Yeah, I mean, I know Dabo, I know Nick Saban is at the top, but you know, when everybody looks at Lincoln Riley's age in his early 30s, I mean, he may be the hot and up-and-coming coach.
Oh, absolutely, and I'll go back to when he was the offensive coordinator at East Carolina. Gil Brandt called me up, and he said, Phil, you want to know a hot name in coaching? I'm like, oh, I'm all ears, Gil. Anytime Gil has something to say, I'm ready to listen. He goes, Lincoln Riley. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. And then he ends up getting the job as the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and the ascension has been just remarkable. So Gil Brandt noticed that way back when he was at East Carolina.
Phil, is there a team out there that's a sleeper in the SEC that you're looking at, you're saying maybe we're not giving them enough attention? Is there somebody out in the SEC that you're looking and you're saying, hey, this team may not have a chance to go to Atlanta, but could be a spoiler-type team? Is there somebody out there that we're not giving enough credit that could be a part of the conversation in the SEC?
Yeah, it's someone that is currently right now on a bowl ban, but I do expect the bowl ban to be overturned, and that's the Missouri Tigers. And I'm not saying Missouri's one of the most talented teams in the SEC. I mean, I've got 5 SEC teams in my top 10. I've got Missouri number 25 in my power poll, but what a schedule Missouri has. And this could really make a lot of waves as the season goes on. First of all, they've got an established quarterback in Kelly Bryant coming in from Clemson. I think he'll do a good job. Larry Roundtree, a running back, is outstanding. The offensive line's veteran. The defense is also a pretty veteran group with 6 starters back. But look at their schedule, Ryan. At Wyoming, okay, they'll be favored. Rebuilding West Virginia, favored. Southeast Missouri at home, favored. South Carolina at home. Well, they almost beat South Carolina on the road last year. Now they get them at home, favored. Troy at home, favored. Mississippi at home, favored. At Vanderbilt, favored. At Kentucky. Remember last year they blew that lead that Kentucky scored on the last play of the game. Missouri's got more coming back than Kentucky does. I think that's a toss-up game, but one they could easily win. They may be 8-0 when they travel between the hedges to face Georgia. And I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Missouri-Georgia game last year. I watched that one closely, and I thought Missouri actually outplayed Georgia at the line of scrimmage. They got a lot of third and shorts. They stuffed Georgia on third and shorts. Georgia had some big plays that turned into a win. If they could pull an upset there, then whoa, Nelly, as they close out with Florida at home, a team they've bashed the last 2 years, Tennessee at home, and at Arkansas. It's a tremendous schedule for anybody, and I think it's going to lead to a lot more wins than people expect out of Missouri. And I do think, for the record, that the bowl ban Missouri is currently on will get overturned by the start of the season.
What do you think about the Dogs? And this will be the final question for Phil Steele. Jeremiah Hottleman now no longer on the team. Certainly receiver may be a concern for them, looking at some inexperienced guys. When you look at the Dogs in 2019, what do you see?
Yeah, so we've seen in college football, a lot of times the newer players can step right in. So the experience level is not huge for me at the receiver spot, and the rest of the Georgia team is just absolutely loaded. DeAndre Swift leads a deep core of running backs. Jake Fromm, a veteran junior quarterback. Last year when we were voting for the Joe Moore, Georgia was right in there. They were one of the final 3 teams, and practically the whole offensive line is back. So that's one of the best offensive lines in the country. Defensively, they're a more veteran unit than they were heading into last year. And when you look at the schedule for Georgia this year, they'll be favored in all 12 games. Now, their toughest tests, Florida and Jacksonville, and at Auburn in Jordan-Hare. If they can pull those 2 out, which I think they will, they've got a shot around the table this year.
It is Phil Steele, 042. Phil Steele, 042 on the Twitter account, ESPN Insider, ESPN.com. But right now, the publication is out. Today is happy birthday, college football, because we get that birthday gift right now. It's available Walmart, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, CVS, Target, Walgreens, Publix, and a great radio show here in Tuscaloosa. Phil, it's always great to be able to catch up with you, man. We love the guide. We love college football. And, after that whipping we took out in Santa Clara, we cannot wait to kick things off in the ATL against Duke.
Sounds good. And I think Alabama will play with that chip on its shoulder this year, Ryan. Always good catching up with you, my friend. And make sure your listeners check out the newsstands today. First on sale day of the magazine.
Thank you, Phil. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.